We're so delighted to have Angie as our featured speaker today. As you may recall from our meeting last time, back in August, hearing from the Onondaga Nation and hearing about food sovereignty was a clear priority for everyone in the group. And so we really wanted to make sure that this next featured speaker could speak to that topic for everyone. Angie is a leader of the Onondaga Nation Farm Crew and the Braiding the Sacred, a growing network of Indigenous corn keepers that help Indigenous nations recover and reunite with their communities' sacred seeds and traditional food sources. So with that, I'm going to actually end the screen sharing and make Angie the spotlight video so that we can all see her. And Angie, the presentation is being recorded. Is that comfortable for you?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, and I will just let you take the read. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I wanted to apologize. We're having technical difficulties over here on the Onondaga Nation, so I drove from one location to Curtis's location so I could be on today. Thank you for waiting. My name is Angela Ferguson, and I am the Onondaga Nation Farm Supervisor. So I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of background on how how our farm project got involved with this group. My nephew, who is a resident of the Tuscarora Nation, he came to college here at Syracuse University, and Dr. Evan Wiseman was a very big mentor to my nephew. And he played a very big role in his life in influencing him to gear his life back towards what he called food justice and we call food sovereignty. So it was like this connection that they made. And he had asked me to come to speak at the very beginning before this group was ever, expanded to how many networks it has now. And I gave a little talk. Each one of us gave a talk on what our role was in the food systems in the area here. So there were a lot of people interested to hear what Indigenous people are doing in regards to agriculture and food systems within their own community. And I just loved his energy because he was just like me, like he was real gung-ho and real passionate and real, like we're going to get this done. And, so it really, it got me going to say like, yeah, we absolutely need to have these networks of communication where we can become stronger as a community, and not just on our nation and Syracuse, but the surrounding rural areas as well. So it was a really good discussion to get it started out, and I was very sad to hear about his passing, but I always believe that like someone leaves a mark behind. So like this group is almost as if he'll always be living, through all the work that you guys are going to do with this, along with us too. So that was the initial way that I got connected to the group, and because I belong to a lot of different committees because I'm a big advocate for food sovereignty and helping other Indigenous peoples and their nations start up projects that can gear towards that. So my time is limited, but luckily I had Curtis, who's very, very passionate about the same issues as well and very knowledgeable. So he kind of came at just the right time to help be the person who can advocate for us on this SOFSA. So the Onondaga Nation, as I'm not sure that everyone actually knows that we are only one of 5 remaining tribes that are actually completely and holding on to their traditional form of government. Everyone else has applied what they call the Dawes Act. And so there are elective systems where they sometimes can keep a little bit of their traditional setup, but the community members vote for someone who is going to become their leader. And here we have hereditary chief systems where it runs through clan family lines. And that's pretty interesting because I've been to the other places. 3 of those 5 remaining nations are within the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And that's the Onondaga Reservation here, the Onondaga Nation, the Tuscarora Nation, and the Tonawanda Seneca Nation. And then there's 2 others. So it's interesting because we're the minority actually when it comes to that. So a lot of other communities that I travel to and help have a protocol that they have to follow even in order to have a garden. And that really was kind of baffling to me to have a community garden. They like have this, they have to fill out paperwork. And I was like, wow, you can't just plant. And it's like, no, we got to get permission from this organization and this entity, and it just goes on and on. So I'm like, how can we eliminate that? How can we get back to traditional agriculture? So that's really the focus of our farming group is the mission of the group of the farm itself is to use our traditional ways of growing food, our culturally appropriate foods, protecting those foods, growing them organically the way our ancestors did, and then turning around with the harvest, including those foods in the ceremonies, and also to get that food back out into the community at no cost to them. So it's been a pretty, it started out small with 5 women, but it's been a pretty wild adventure because a lot of people are here now planting. So in the 5 years that we've had this work crew solely focused on doing the agriculture, we had 89 gardens on our nation this year. And I think the nation is what, 6 miles, 6 miles?
It's like, no, well, 2 by 3
Yeah,
square.
it's like a 6 mile square
Mm.
radius, and we're producing enough food to feed thousands of people. So it can be done, and that's one of the things I like to do is to show people how you can maximize the amount of food that you can grow in a small place. Um, when this pandemic first hit, it was very people were very panicked, and they were grabbing food off the shelves, and that's kind of and I was so thankful that this group was already in place. We already had these connections. But when I saw what the people were doing on the outside with just the whole scarcity mentality, it was like each man for himself, which is a foreign concept to us. And hoarding things that really were, not thinking of your fellow human beings, right? Just trying to survive, basically. And here, we didn't have to do that because we already had food for every single person, man, woman, child, infant, elder, leader, every human that lives on this nation, we had food put away and prepared for them. And we would be okay for many years. So our people did not panic. They didn't react in the same way. And one of the things I had made it a special point to call elders, all elder leaders, indigenous leaders all across the United States that I know to see what is their advice on this matter, and how to deal with it when it came to food. And one of the Hopi elders told me, it's amazing for me to watch the way our brothers on the outside are worried about the toilet paper and stuff. So they're worried about what's going out, but they're not worried about the food, what's going in. So, and and I kind of got a kick out of that. He just thought because they have food put away for probably 10 years, they have enough that they could survive like that. So right away, along with the food scarcity, there was also a need, where people, because now they can't even get the basics. They weren't able to get the things they needed. And I was lucky to connect with Peter Ricardo um, from the food bank, the Central New York Food Bank here, and he had a lot of connections to say, these people are stuck with all this food. There was like Cisco, all the restaurants were shut down, and Cisco had all this food that's going to go to waste because there was nobody purchasing those things that normally would have been. And so we were able to create this little network, a kind of a phone tree sort of thing, where people who had surplus had no one to move it because all the employees were staying home and things like that. Then they were able to connect us with, we'll take it. And we had the means and the hands and the people who could either process it to can it, preserve the food to make it last longer. And all these foods that came were just, it was just such a blessing because for us, it brought our community together. We all social distance and everybody worked far apart. And we created these bundles that we could deliver to the community members. And so we had volunteers pulling around back, and we would just load up their trucks and they would go. And so I'm really thankful for that. That's one of the things I would personally like to thank this entire connection on the group of SOFSA for, because it created a real sense of calmness here. And so by doing that here, what we had set up, I communicated with I work with all the other farms on the other Haudenosaunee nations, and I called all the people who ran those food facilities and food processing facilities. And I said, why don't you guys try what we're doing over here in Onondaga County? And so a lot of them were able to actually model what we're doing here, and then they started to do that in the beginning, and it worked out for them as well. So it was kind of a win-win situation. And there's so much more now. Like, we're at a place now where people are a little more calm, and I know a lot of people wonder, like, what we can contribute to this group. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the things I do, and there may be people who are on listening now who may think, yeah, that's something we might want to try, because we're always willing to share knowledge, experience. Our people are, we have hardworking people that are always willing to help out any way that we can pay back, to contribute. So when we first started up our farm was about 5 years ago. I've been working on the farm for over 10 years, but when we started a full-blown farm project, we had 5 women and we had 5 men. The women are doing the agriculture traditionally, and then the men are doing hunting and fishing. And so all of the vegetables and the 3 sisters and the different things that we're growing in the gardens, we also distribute to the community for free, along with the meat, the wild game, and the fish. We also have a buffalo farm here, and we butcher and package up, and also, share that with the community. So when we first started up there, there was basically nothing happening on this farm. The farm itself is about 163 acres, and all we did was grow hay there to feed the bison. And I was like, well, we need to feed the people too. So that's I saw all this land, and I could see that this is we could do a lot of food in a small amount of space. And we actually are doing that now. My council is the one who's the chief's council here in Onondaga, supported the work. I had to present that to them to get permission to do, an actual work crew, a work crew that is being, paid to do this kind of work. And so in 2020, it's something that needs to happen in order for us to be able to dedicate all of our time. So you can take a few people from a community, invest in them, and then the people in each individual household is going to reap the benefit of that investment in those people that are doing the work. So that's why we don't charge anybody for the food. I also personally, my own personal belief is that, to me, the foods are relatives. We're not above or below them, and they carry life spirits through them. They reproduce. They do everything basically that humans do, and they don't ruin the environment. So to me, I don't condone to sell the food, really, our traditional foods, because it's all part of who we are. And we've been able to travel to different nations, different food sovereignty summits, to teach people actually, like, what is food sovereignty. National Geographic is actually here right now. They're here to film about our food sovereignty. So they'll be here on Monday. They're here now, but they'll be doing a presentation similar like this with me on Monday and the farm people. So
And you do all this old school.
yeah, we don't even have a tractor. So for people who think that's not possible, it's possible. We don't use any pesticides. We're completely organic farming. And I was even showing people how, when they live in an apartment, well, I don't own any land, I can't grow anything.
Would you like good news? Yeah.
We came up with a system of putting garden pails, like the pails that they throw out of the grocery stores that used to have ice cream. They're like 5-gallon pails. We drilled holes in the bottom. We brought dirt down from the farm, and people could put their own dirt in the pail. And you wouldn't believe the amazing things that came out of there. There was huge corn plants, sage, peppers, tomatoes. We gave them the seeds. it was like a portable garden that you could move in and out of your patio or whatever. And so I wanted to show mostly the youth that even if you live in an apartment, you still can grow your own food. And they really enjoyed that. So there's different ideas that we come up with, like, we just kind of adapt to whatever environment there is. And I'm always seeing, like, when I see people plow up a spot, but then they don't actually get to it. Like, they meant to have a garden, but they just never got around to it. I'll stop and ask them, can I plant something there? I'll tend to it. I'll come back. So there's been many times I've planted in other people's yards and, tended it myself. So it's kind of like, yeah. And then I just give them a little of what comes out of it. So this particular group, though, what I feel is that the Onondaga Nation, all of the land around here, we're connected to it. And so even when I go to the city, downtown Syracuse, or I head out towards, a lot of times when we're going by Skaneateles and, down there by the lake, I'm always picturing how much food had been grown in these areas, because anywhere there's waterways, if you look over by Onondaga Lake or anything, that's where we always grew our foods. So I try to envision in my mind what it would look like back then. And I see that people now are starting to change their focus and start to be more concerned with where their food is coming from. So I think the connections between big agriculture and small organic farmers, like, it has to happen. And then getting that food out to the community members. That is where there's always a disconnect, is where you have the food and the people that need it, but now there's a little bit of a problem in between there, because how are you going to get it from point A to B? And especially when there's a global pandemic occurring. So it's been challenging to do that. We all have to think outside the box now and try to come up with maybe a whole new food system, is really what it is. And it's scaring people on the outside. Well, no, they don't want change. They don't shake things up. There was like 90 million acres of corn that was lost in Iowa when they had that storm come through. And corn makes the world go round. Like, people don't realize how often they eat corn within a day, because so many products contain a byproduct of that initial plant. And so we're in trouble, guys, in the future here without all that corn. And that's actually part of our prophecies, talking about in the future of what's going to happen to, the corn. So, it's a big concern of mine, and it's a conversation that I participated in with a lot of other people who, pool a lot of information together. One of the things that I was real interested, because throughout this pandemic, there were different people donated food. There was a company called Agbotics, and they're close to Watertown, but they brought down a bunch of, they have an indoor greenhouse they're trying to engage youth to be interested in agriculture. So what they're doing is creating robots, using technological means to do agriculture, so that they can kind of get younger people interested to do both. So their farm does everything except for harvesting. The people still have to harvest. And all the foods they donated to us were antiviral foods, because I do a lot of research into foods and what foods are good for our people. And it was interesting, because I was like, you're bringing everything we need to fight off this disease, and then they shared it with many people in this area, I'm sure. But the beet greens they gave us, and the radishes and all that stuff. So we had people trying foods that they never ate before. And that was interesting, because now they like it, and now we're growing it in our gardens. So those are just some small connections that you make that can have a ripple effect, all the way down to the benefit of the health of the people. And that's ultimately the goal of the farm, is to get our Onondaga people back to out of this diabetes slump that we're in, and try to re-engage people into not only eating, because you even have to sometimes encourage people to eat some of our traditional foods. They'll say, ooh, especially kids, what is that? Because it's foreign to them. And so we're trying to reintroduce these things to make it the norm. I'm hoping that if anybody, that's on the call today is interested. I mean, we've traveled around to different farms, and we come, and it's kind of like stormtroopers, have the dirt ready, and then we come in like there's just a whole bunch of us, and then boom, we plant everything by hand and we're done. And you're like, wait, what? That was only an hour. and your garden is finished, you know. So we offer help like that, and you'd be surprised like how fast you can get done when you have lots of people and you also have that energy going. So it's something that we've done with other nations, and we've done it with other gardens. And then call us at harvest time and we'll come back and help you pick, or you know, do whatever you need. So there's follow through to the end, not just, you know, everyone gets excited at planting time, and right around July, if you go look at people's gardens, you'll see weeds galore. and that's kind of when people give up, like I can't grow things for myself. So there has to be kind of a network of people that are willing to assist, and I kind of felt like the food bank did that for us. It really was amazing because our people, we can do it right here, and we've already went over 100,000 pounds of food here, because I've been keeping track of the different weights that are coming in on the trucks, and the people love it. And so it's created more of an open-mindedness to connect through different food networks, because not everyone can have their own garden or whatever, but creating that access to actual door knocking. Sometimes you actually have to go to someone's door, knock on the door, and hand them the food, you know, and that's actually how you get them engaged. Some people are wondering, like, well, people aren't really that interested. And I would go house to house and actually sit with people for hours and talk with some of the elders, and they like the company that came along with the food too. So there's these human connections that need to take place again. And I know it's difficult with this COVID crisis, but we still can't be afraid to have that human interaction at some point. So I'm not sure how long you wanted me to talk for, but
This is so great, Angie. Thank you so much. We are at 2:30, so I want to acknowledge that some people might need to hop off.
okay.
But if you're willing to stay on for a few questions for people who are able to, for those who need to leave right now, I just want to make two really important reminders. Please complete the census, which ends today, and please vote. Two important reminders. And I will circulate times for the next meeting. So if anybody has to, unfortunately, leave right at 2:30. Oh, and Larkin just sent the link if anybody still needs to complete the census. So I will send a follow-up information about the special meeting that we'll have, as I mentioned earlier. So anyone who'd like to, please stay on and ask any questions of Angie, if you don't mind, Angie.
No, that's fine.
Okay, great. So I guess maybe I'll go back to gallery view for everyone. And yeah, just open it up to questions. You feel free to chat them in if that's more comfortable for you, or feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have to say thanks so much, Angie. It has been a distinct pleasure to get in touch again through this group and through Curtis, but it's been a fabulous partnership that I'm just thrilled to have been a part of it at the early stages. And such an impressive group, such wonderful storytelling. I appreciate it. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you. I mean, it was really interesting to know that across the country, people are going back to, people on reservations are going back to traditional farming. I mean, I had a chance to go to the Hopi village and to be in some other reservations, the Navajo reservation and stuff. And so, you know, it's great to know that people are doing that. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, I'm glad that it's happening here, don't get me wrong, but somehow I always expected the Onondagas to be into food. So that didn't surprise me, but to know that it's happening in other places is just great. And something you said just reminded me, and it may have been Cooperative Extension that did this, but a couple of years ago, people could get from some agency buckets with dirt in them and seeds in them, and they could plant them. I think the goal was primarily potatoes, and I think it was primarily for low-income people. But that idea of, as we come into next spring, if we're still really dealing with COVID, encouraging people to grow food on their,
Mhm.
decks or backyards
Right.
or on their, that sounds like such a really good thing for us to be involved with, that idea and spreading it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we had the kids actually decorate, and paint up their pails and everything first, and then they had to actually scoop their own dirt, and then we had compost, and they could add compost that we already had prepared if they wanted to put that together, and then we had all our traditional seeds out for them to pick what they wanted to grow, and then they would have to come and sit with me for me to tell them like what companion plants work well together. Like, nope, you can't plant this with this, and just kind of give them a little planting lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk about Braiding the Sacred, but I could give you a quick overview of what we do. We do have a website, Braiding the Sacred. The work that we do is also supported by the Onondaga Nation, but what basically we're doing is gathering all indigenous corn growers. We started with 100, and so when you come to one of our gatherings, you actually have to bring either a cob or a braid or a jar of your seeds that you grew yourself. So it's kind of like your ticket to the gathering. And then we put them all on a table in the center. And it's pretty amazing. If you go to our website, you can check out, kind of explains a little more of what we do, braidingthesacred.org. But we had a corn collection given to us, and there was over 1,200 varieties of corn. And it was from a Cherokee corn farmer that spent his whole entire life just keeping the seeds going and to protect them. So our responsibility is to take care of that collection. And it took me 3 years and a bunch of interns from SU that came every single week faithfully to help me sort out and clean up all those seeds and label them. And when we finally got finished, we found out there was another half to the collection. A woman in Kansas had the other half of it. So we just brought it back last fall time. And so I haven't had an opportunity to get through it yet, but there's another probably 2,000 varieties in there. And it's pretty amazing because it's, some of those things are the last there is here, even on the whole planet. And it's very emotional, it's very sacred, it's very spiritual to be even around it. Some people, when they come to see the seed collection, they can't even come walk in the room because they're like, whoa. It's not just Haudenosaunee seeds. These are seeds from all over. And it wasn't just indigenous corn growers, because there were a lot of organic farmers as well that he was friends with that kept certain varieties going. And so there's just so many, it's overwhelming. But what we've been doing is trying to rematriate those seeds and get them back to the people where they originally came from. And for them, they're like relatives. It's very emotional. So I think we have some videos and stuff from our gatherings on there, and you're welcome to check that out. But we were supposed to have a big gathering here of all of those corn growers, which is over 5,000 people now. And they were all going to come here this past July, everyone that has been invited. And we couldn't have the gathering because of the pandemic. But maybe next year, we'll see.
Brianna, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a million questions for you, so maybe, hopefully I can set up time to ask you a lot of questions, but
Sure. You stop at the farm.
I mean, I would
We're
love
braiding corn. There's a lot of cool things to see.
yeah, I mean, hopefully I can figure out how to connect with you. But I guess one question that came up when you were talking about the seed saving and seed keeping, do you also steward other seeds, or do you concentrate mainly on the corn?
No, we do. I've been trying to teach people about nutrition as well here, Haudenosaunee nutrition, where we want to create like a little class of that, because there's a lot of superfoods that come out of the woods that are foraged that our people need to like put back into their diets, and we've been doing that, so that's encouraging. But we also, I grow a superfood garden every year where you only have to eat a small amount to have the same amount of nutrients as if you had, say, a bowl of something. You only need 2 teaspoons of this. So we've been growing different things like beets, cabbages, kale, Swiss chard. Every time I hear about a new superfood, I'm always like, oh, I got to grow that in the garden and get the people to try that, because I'm trying to teach them about not eating so much and having a more nutritionally sound meal. In addition to growing the food, we do the whole circle. So we do the seed keeping, the planting, harvesting, the seed saving for the next year, And we also do food preparation, cooking, traditional cooking methods, so that you're doing the whole circle of the food and you have that connection. And then also, I've been trying to get the younger people involved in serving that food to people so that they get the connection of that, the thrill you get when someone enjoys a meal that you prepared, that you grew yourself. You know, that really is what sovereignty is.
Steve, I think you were trying to break in at one point.
I did, unless Priyana has something else. So I also have a lot of questions about farming specifically, and also about how I can take advantage of all these, if I can take advantage of all the lessons and things. But the question I wanted to ask was more about organizing across communities, which is something that I'm interested in. Like, it strikes me, something I've been thinking about since college, and like my native friends talk to me about all the time, is like how there's a network of nations across this nation that are like that exist parallel to the sort of like failed state we all live in. But it's like, and that exists for a number of reasons, a lot of them very sad, within Indigenous communities. But then there's also this kind of cottage industry of community organizations that have a harder time connecting with organizations in other states and other places. Do you have any tips on like how a community organization could go about building a broad network across a region or across a country of people who are working towards the same goals and sustaining that over a long period of time?
Yes, actually, when we started with Braiding the Sacred, the original gathering was 100 people coming here to Onondaga. And I actually went around personally, like I said, house to house. I had to go there and invest the time to reach out to some of these elderly corn growers that they normally don't, older Native people don't go to gatherings and do those kinds of things in general, even if there wasn't a pandemic. That's just not the thing they do. And so I would have to go and sit with them to ask them to invite to come to this first gathering. And that personal visit is why they went. If I would have called them on the phone or text, some of them don't know what texting or email even is. So I had to engage them the old school way, which is face to face, sitting down and visiting, having a cup of coffee or whatever. And so from that small realization that I had is that you got to go way back to the personal human level. That's actually how it's great that we have all this technology and social network. But when I can tell you about all these seeds until you saw them. If you saw them, you'll never forget it. So that the visual impact of being present in something is different. So a lot of times I think when you're trying to create these human organizations where you can do something like that, which is, you're trying to branch further out, you all have like-minded goals. We held our gatherings in one different community, and we left an impact there. We didn't just have a gathering, we talked about things, we got all revved up, we were all jazzed, and then we went back to our own communities, and then, the thrill is gone. We actually pursued with that one, we focus on one community at a time and continue to go back there 2 or 3 times to all the way through to the end, and then until they actually got a project up and running. Then it was like, okay, let's move on to another community. And then it expanded like that. So in 5 years, we went 19 gatherings of people. And now, like I said, we went from 100 people to over 5,000. So it can be done, but there's a lot of, I think, personal level. Instead of throwing a shout out, like nowadays, it's like social media. They throw a whole bunch of stuff out there and you might get, throw 10,000 things out there and you'll get 2,000 back. Where if you invest more into the actual community itself that you're focusing on, you really only can do one at a time. And then now they go with you to the next one, and then you pick them up like that. And the group gets larger and the work becomes less. That's how it works. Like if you start with 5 people and then you make a group with 10, and then those 10 people will go to the next person's town and help them. And they had 10 more there. Now you got 20 people to help the next town, and the workload becomes actually less. So I think if you think about it in those terms, it might be a good platform. We even joke, and we're like a grassroots organization. We're not a nonprofit. We don't know how we fly under the radar. We get all kinds of donations, financial donations. We have to ask people to be our fiscal sponsor, and somehow, some way, it just all works out. And we've never argued. The people that are in the group, there's no power struggles, there's no arguing, and it's really I'm like, we're a pretty good role model for other groups. In 5 years, we just get more people. No one ever leaves. It's a really great group. So, yeah.
Angie, that is a wonderful metaphor for, I think, what we all hope SOFSA can be. And we will need your ongoing coaching for how we can best emulate the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So any last questions?
Want to add anything? One thing I'd like to add is we actually work with South America as well in Mexico. So we totally, and one of our girls has gone to Africa as well and connected with corn growers over there. So to us, we don't make boundaries that were imaginary lines that are placed between states, counties, cities, countries. From Onondaga, like for us, Onondaga Nation, we don't have a boundary, and it's just our territory. This is our homeland. And even if you go back in time and look at our treaty we made, the Two-Row Wampum Treaty, the Katswenta, we didn't think we owned it from the first place because we made a treaty with the visitors that came across the ocean that we'll both live here. We'll both care for the land and we'll stay in our canoe and you guys can travel in your canoe and we'll have a mutual respect always. So that's just that's a taught thinking, I think, like through time that people have forgotten that was the initial teaching, is that you have to work together to be successful, adapt or die. And some people don't realize you can hold on to your core values all the time, but you have to be able to adapt to whatever the current situation is. And our young people are struggling with that right now, to be honest. They're not handling it well at all. So we got to get them all back out in the woods, back out in the garden, and back out connecting.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know, I love that you added in that you work with people in Latin American countries, because a lot of what you were describing, I have family from Blackfeet Nation and from Mexico, a lot of indigenous roots. And there's always that sort of family economy sort of strategy when you were describing like going to help with planting and then going to help with harvest. It was like, that's exactly how things get done in that sort of way.
Yeah, it's good. It's a lot of the people that I have friends that are from Mexico and they're missing, it's harvest time. They're missing their villages. They're missing what they normally would be doing. I was like, come on up to the farm. I will not mind if you want to pick corn. If you want to come help us, we will not mind. And they just move so fast, and they were just having so much joy from that, because it's like they were missing their homeland, but this was the next best piece, and of course I'll cook food and feed you guys while you're here. So they were happy to be able to eat our Iroquois corn soup, because they have never had it, but they know the taste. They know the taste of the hominy and the white corn maize, so they were so happy to have it. It was like, oh, that's just, that's a good mutual connection that you can make through different groups. And
we learned about the fungus.
yeah, they taught us about the huit lacoche, because we don't eat that. So they were like, well, when you find it, save it for us, because we make a delicacy with that. And we didn't know that. So you learn something new every day from somebody else, and it was pretty exciting. They didn't want to leave because there was so much food in harvest. And they're like, oh, I really want to stay and pick all your squash. And I said, I have someone coming later the afternoon. You guys worked hard enough today. Yeah, it's a good time to visit. We got a lot going on up there.
It does sound like there's a lot of interest in potentially having a SOFSA visit, and I feel like there might be ways that we could do it safely.
Yeah.
So perhaps we can talk offline, and I can circle back to folks about that. Sure. Because I think
just try not to have groups of more than 10 up there currently. Okay. It's a farm, so we're outside basically, and inside of our barn we leave the doors wide open, and we have about 5 workers right now. But when we do have people come up, we tell them if there's more than 10, we have a whole nother section. You'll have to work over there so that we're social distancing, which isn't normal for us.
Yeah.
We're usually squeezed in and rubbing up against each other, trying to do things. And so now I kind of like it, having my own space back.
In the spirit of a ball rolling down and getting bigger and bigger, would anyone like to help with thinking a farm visit through me?
I'd be happy to help. And Angie, I was meaning to say, I didn't have a question, but just to say thank you. I'm Robin's daughter, and she's been trying to get me.
I know, we've been trying to meet you
I know.
forever.
So this will be my excuse. I will help plan this, and then we'll all come.
Okay, great. Yes.
Perfect. Great. Angie, thank you so much. This was amazing. And
Thank you for having me.
it's
I
so
could, if you come up to the farm, I could go on and on more than a half hour. There's lots of stuff to see and learn. And even now National Geographic, they went up there just to take a peek, and they kept me there till midnight. And I was like, I'm tired. Can you guys go now? Because they weren't expecting to see what they saw when they got there. You know, they were pleasantly surprised. And I think that's going to have an impact on the outside communities to know that, you know, this little central New York area is producing more food than a lot more people know about. You know, I mean, we have the #1 apple farm in all of the United States. I mean, there's different farms that are occurring around here that people don't know. Like, it's kind of like a hidden gem. It's like and I think it needs a little more, like it could be a good role model for people on the outside to see how people do that and how they can grow things together and how different things have an impact, because the environment's a big thing. So that could maybe be another call to talk about the soil, the composition, how it's alive. That's what I'm going to try to teach kids this year. That's what I'm focusing on, is soil, to teach them that even dirt has life in it, you know, and you need to pay attention to it. So me and Curtis are big on that, big on the environmental issues. So I don't want to get going on that today, but we could do that on another conversation.
That would be great. Yeah, I feel like the speaker series is just, it's so wonderful, and I feel like it almost needs to be its own, like, a whole long thing so that we don't have to cut it short ever.
Well, it might grow, you know.
Yeah, we may need to be devoting a lot more time to this, because it's really lovely to have these conversations. Thank you so much, Angie. I do want to let people go because we're 20 minutes over, but we will be in touch. Larkin and I will make something happen and figure out when we can come lend our hands to your work in groups that are small and safe. Yeah. Yeah, wonderful.
Or even if anybody has individual time and wants to stop up, you know, you can always give them my phone number or my email, and we can.
I don't want to share your email with 120 people who are really excited.
I have thousands of people in my phone. My phone, the ringer's never on because people are always calling me, and it's like when I get to the phone, then I'll scroll through the texts or the emails because I don't talk on it much, you know. I'm busy. My hands.
I'm happy if you'd like me to share your contact information. I'm happy to do that, but I don't want to do it without your permission. Yeah, are you all right with me sort of posting just this video of your portion of the talk?
Sure.
Okay, great. So I'll share that as well, so that the people who had to pop off earlier really got the full breadth of the conversation. All right, thank you again.
Thank you.
Really appreciate everyone. Thanks for staying over.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.